Once again, I would like to welcome to the pre-award lunch discussion session, What Happens After You Click Submit, a discussion on the NSF review process. Please allow me to share a short bio on our discussion leaders today. Dr. Stacy Kelley Guzman previously worked as a biologist in the Division of Molecular and Cellular Biosciences at the National Science Foundation. During her federal service, Dr. Kelley Guzman worked alongside program directors to facilitate merit review, served on a working group to create a new solicitation, and created new visual aids and videos to train panelists and reviewers. My name is Stephanie Rodriguez-Makhlouf, and I have been working in sponsored programs internationally since 2011. Currently, I am the Assistant Director of the Central Proposal Office at the University of Central Florida. We're going to start this presentation with an overview of the process. And to do that, I'm going to play a short video. While you watch, I'd like you to listen closely for key steps, who makes decisions, and how the process works. Actually, let me do this again. I don't think I clicked the button for the video. Let me just do this real quick. I'm going to share again. There we go. Okay.
$50,000. That's about the number of research proposals the National Science Foundation receives every year. NSF's mission is to promote the progress of science, but it's able to support only a fraction of the proposed research with its limited resources. So how does NSF determine which research has the greatest potential? Which would be the most fruitful investment of taxpayer dollars? Enter NSF's merit review process, considered the gold standard the world over for evaluating proposals in a competitive environment. A rigorous process, long recognized as providing a powerful return on investment.
All right, let's try this again.
$50,000. That's about the number of research proposals the National Science Foundation receives every year. NSF's mission is to promote the progress of science, but it's able to support only a fraction of the proposed research with its limited resources. So how does NSF determine which research has the greatest potential? Which would be the most fruitful investment of taxpayer dollars? Enter NSF's merit review process, considered the gold standard the world over for evaluating proposals in a competitive environment. A rigorous process, long recognized as providing a powerful return on investment for the American public. Most often, here's how it generally works. NSF invites proposals across its broad range of programs in science and engineering and STEM education. Proposers craft and electronically submit their proposals. All good ideas welcome. NSF finds a home in the appropriate program for each properly prepared proposal, and the review process for all proposals received by the applicable deadline begins. Every NSF program director is an expert with a broad understanding of their entire discipline and will ultimately decide which proposals to recommend for funding. But first, they'll identify and assemble a body of experts, some of the finest minds in the appropriate fields, to review each proposal. A diverse mix of university faculty and others whose perspectives will help the program director assess the significance and quality of the proposed research. The review criteria are National Science Board approved, intellectual merit, the potential to advance knowledge, and broader impacts, the potential to benefit society and contribute to the achievement of specific societal outcomes. Because not all programs and grants are alike, the review process may take one of several forms: individual, panel, or a combination of both. Typically, at least 3 reviewers review each proposal. Individual reviewers usually have specific expertise and evaluate and rate proposals and send the program director detailed comments. Panel members evaluate, rate, and comment on their assigned proposals, then usually leave home and travel to NSF, where they meet with the program director for 1 or more days. To reduce costs, a growing number of panels meet virtually. Either way, the panel discusses every proposal one by one, engaging in rich debate. In the end, their written panel summary and individual reviews provide the program director an invaluable, independent assessment of which proposals are good, better, best. The best and brightest ideas according to the best and brightest experts. No free passes, no good old boy network. The NSF merit review process is confidential between reviewers and NSF. Now it's decision time, and the program director carefully considers the reviewer's input, along with available budget and a range of other factors, such as which projects will fit together synergistically to help answer big questions and move the field forward, which will help build capacity in a promising area, provide geographic and demographic diversity, complement other recently funded projects, strike the right balance of projects, some with success fairly certain, others with a fair amount of risk, but with potential for advances that are truly transformational. With their own recommendations now formulated, program directors share their plan with their division director, making the case for why each proposal is or is not worthy of support and taxpayer dollars, and how each takes an important step in advancing the scientific frontier. When the division director concurs with a recommendation, it's forwarded to NSF's Division of Grants and Agreements, which reviews the proposal's business and financial aspects, and an award is made to the appropriate organization. Everyone who submits a proposal, whether recommended for funding or not, receives extensive feedback. The individual reviews, though not the reviewers' identities, and for proposals discussed by a panel, the panel summary. Proposers are also welcome to contact their program director for additional feedback and revise and resubmit their proposals in a future competition. Information on every award is easily accessible to any member of the general public via the NSF website. NSF's merit review process is replete with checks and balances, multiple reviews, panels, division director reviews, strict conflict of interest rules that assure personal interests don't impact reviews, committees of visitors, experts who review NSF's program portfolios and assess the quality and integrity of the decision-making process, advisory committees, and more. It's a model built on the willingness of people to serve. Nearly 40,000 reviewers a year, committed to their science and giving back to the nation. A model that lets good ideas bubble up from anywhere, with about 1 in 4 awards going to first-time awardees each year, and one that identifies the best ideas to keep America at the cutting edge. And it's a model that helps NSF keep its overhead low enough that 94% of the Foundation's budget goes back out to support over 300,000 researchers, teachers, postdoctoral fellows, trainees, and students every year. The NSF Merit Review Process. The best ideas for the best science, for the best returns for our nation.
Okay, now I'm going to hand the presentation over to Stacy, who's going to start by describing some key steps to how a proposal becomes an award. Stacy, how are you doing?
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm doing great today. Actually, I wanted to open this question up to the audience now that you've seen that video, which is a little bit old from 2014, but still has a lot of salient details in it. What do you think are some of the key steps of how a proposal becomes an award at NSF? You can type into the chat or raise your hand.
We've got a response from Andrea, review, process, and feedback. We have another response from Laneka, great ideas. Deidre also adds intellectual merit. Laneka adds broader impacts, intellectual merit. Matthew has stated various levels of peer review from expert panels. We have another broader impacts from Betty. Andrea adds communication and following guidelines.
Exactly. If you want to click advance on the slide for me, Stephanie. Selection of reviewers. A few of you talked about expert review, getting expert opinions, peer review. We'll discuss a little bit about that today. Then there's also reviewing the proposal on its merits, which sometimes is called peer review or merit review. So really getting at the details of what makes this proposal great and why should this one be funded. Then the recommendation of an award takes multiple steps in the process. And finally, notification of award also is an important step for all of us, right? To find out that what you wrote, what you proposed is getting an award is a great step in the process. So let's talk about these key steps and what you've also mentioned as far as broader impacts and intellectual merit, and figure out how that fits in the entire process of NSF, the review process at NSF. So next slide, please. So the NSF review process is considered fair and competitive and most of all transparent. If you look at the policies and awards, policies and procedures guide, chapter 3, which I'll call PAPPG for short, it covers the NSF review process. And the website that I have listed at the bottom of this slide also discovers a lot about merit review and goes through this diagram of the review process. So they break it down into 3 different phases. The first phase is proposal preparation and submission. So you find out an opportunity is announced, usually a solicitation announced on grants.gov, and you want to go after that opportunity. So you create a really competitive proposal and you submit that proposal to NSF. Then NSF receives that proposal and starts the process of phase 2, where it's assigned to a program officer, who I might sometimes call a program director. It's the same position. And they help identify reviewers for that proposal. Compliance checks also occur at this time, and some proposals might be returned without review at this stage. And if you read chapter 4B of the PAPPG, it provides a lot of reasons for return without review. Some cases it can be a duplicate proposal, or if you have a proposal that's inappropriate for NSF funding, like a clinical trial, might also be a reason. Or if you're not complying with everything laid out in the PAPPG as far as standards. For example, if you don't have a heading for broader impacts, it could be returned without review. So it's really important to pay attention to not only what the solicitation says, but also what the PAPPG says. After it makes it through that check, the NSF program officer conducts a peer review. And they do this through individual reviews, a merit review panel, site visits, or a combination of those steps. So program officers use individual reviews or the merit review panel summary, what the panel creates after their time together, and other factors like the video talked about, like geographical balance or making sure that you're reaching underrepresented people, to recommend an award or a decline at step 6. That recommendation goes from the program officer to the division director for their review and concurrence in step 7 of phase 2. And then after the award is concurred with at the division director stage, it moves on to phase 3 for a business review by the Division of Grants and Agreements. And then that division of Grants and Agreements looks over things like policies, making sure that you're in compliance with all the policies, and the budget and fiscal responsibilities of the person, the organization that will be receiving the award. before the award is actually made and then finalized. So that is everything in a nutshell, but let's dig a little bit deeper back into phase 2 in section 5 on peer review. So peer review comes from reviewers who are internal or external to NSF. Sometimes solicitations only require internal reviews, and other times program officers seek out reviews from experts in the field like the video discussed. If it's an individual review, it's sometimes called an ad hoc review, and that might be an expertise that's hard to find. So you go after that one individual scientist to get their experience and understanding of that proposal. And then other times the program officer might want to conduct a site visit to glean information to make that important funding decision. Or they might even decide the best way to get at it is a merit review panel where you're inviting in multiple experts to review the proposal. So what do you do on a merit review panel? Let's open this one up to the audience.
Give me 1 second. We have a question come in from
okay.
How can we find out the expertise of the reviewers?
So we, as people that apply for funding, don't find out the expertise of the reviewers. They keep the reviews confidential, but a program officer would make sure that the expertise is aligned with the proposal that's being reviewed and the reviewers themselves. Very good question. So what do you do on a merit review panel? You can type into the chat or raise your hand.
Any ideas?
Has anyone maybe attended a panel before?
I have one entry. Lanika says, review proposal for merit.
That's true. That is very true. Well, this kind of goes back to what you discussed earlier about intellectual merit and broader impacts. So if you want to click advance on this slide, we'll see the typical roles of a merit review panel. If you're a panelist, you're going to read your assigned proposals. So you'll receive proposal assignments ahead of the panel, and you'll read those and provide individual assessments. And then you'll bring that to the panel and discuss your findings and come to a consensus on how that panel as a whole reviews that proposal and provides a score, writing a panel summary as the output for the panelists. If you want to work at NSF, you could be in my role, which was an analyst. A biologist is what they called my position, but it's analyst. And you support the merit review process, working alongside those program officers to make sure that those panel summaries are really thorough and completely explain why that proposal was either awarded or declined. Making sure like panel rankings are recorded and you're listening to the discussion and managing the discussion length. And if you're a program director or program officer, which is also an invited position at the National Science Foundation, there's a lot of program officers that are there for very short periods of time, a couple years, and then some that are more there long-term. So you can, if you have a scientific background, you can become a program officer. You help manage that discussion, listen to the expertise of the panel and get everything that you need out of the panel while they're there, and then use their rankings to help guide your recommendations as well. So the panel is reviewing on those two merit review criteria: intellectual merit, or the potential to advance knowledge across the field, and broader impacts, or the potential to contribute to the NSF mission and societal goals. And they're doing that within 5 elements of review: the potential of the intellectual merit and broader impacts, how transformative it is, creative or original, the plan, how well reasoned, organized, or based on sound rationale it is, and including the mechanism to assess success, and how well qualified the individual PI, the team, and the organization is, and how adequate the resources are in the proposal based on the organization or collaborators. So the final product of a merit review panel is the panel summary. And alongside of the individual reviews from those reviewers, the program officer can help decide what to recommend for award or decline.
Stacy, we have a couple of comments.
Okay.
On the merit review panel, are they declaring any conflicts of interest?
Yes. When reviewers are selected, they declare conflicts of interest, and then the program officers ensure that that panelist that has the conflict is not reviewing that proposal.
Okay, and our next question is, do all complete applications go through a merit review?
Anything that's accepted from the National Science Foundation that's moved through and not returned without review is reviewed. So the declines and awards are both reviewed.
Okay, that's all.
Okay. So the next slide.
Sorry.
As a program director, how do you decide what to recommend for award? Any ideas on this?
We have one offer of synergy with other projects.
Very true.
Also, what the broader impacts are.
Yes, definitely.
We have research in conjunction with agency goals and mission. We have consider the priorities of your program. Also, clear goals and an understanding of how they impact society and science. Next, we have alignment with division, mission, and goals. Great participation here. We also have risk-based approach. And we have based on feedback from the peer review and budget. And finally, I see a balance between multiple factors: reviewers' feedback, geographical, and institutional diversity.
Exactly. It is absolutely a balance. So you're not only balancing what's best for your field of science from your perspective, from the informed perspective that you now have following review, but you're also balancing that with the feedback that you received alongside the process. So those expert opinions, geographical balance, your budget, how far you can spread the money, what you need to do with those funds, how those programs or projects that you're funding align with things that have been previously funded, where your support is going. And you're doing things to try to ensure kind of a balance geographically and also reaching those underrepresented populations through broader impacts. So there's a lot to it. It's not just a simple decision of whether or not something receives an award. And program officers do take that responsibility very seriously. It's the majority of what they do at the National Science Foundation. So they're doing things like planning, deciding on the type of review. Are they doing a panel summary review, a merit panel review? Are they doing an ad hoc review? Are they getting input from experts outside NSF or just inside NSF? Then they're reviewing and gathering those reviews and then comparing that proposal's merits to other proposals' merits, and finally selecting their award portfolio. So that's very good. If we move to the next slide. Thinking back through the process that you've heard in the video, how is a proposal recommended for award? Any ideas?
Okay, one suggestion is proposal meets the goals of the project. Another suggestion, program office pleads the case of the proposal to the division officer. through panel scores and discussion. Based on how well the application is put together and how much of the material relates to the guidelines.
Very good answers. All of these feed into the process at some point, but let's take a look at one specific area of the process that we've talked through and talk how that overlaps with how a proposal is recommended for award. So if you advance the slide to the animation, great. So if we dig into this phase 2, step 6 and 7, and phase 3, step 8, we start out with the program officer that's already conducted the merit review panel or gotten the independent reviews. They make a recommendation for award or decline. And in this case, they're saying, this is great, let's go ahead and fund it. It's going to become part of my portfolio. So that recommendation is just a recommendation. Your program officer might want to award it, but it is not awarded at this time. It's only after a division director who's in charge of the program at a higher level at NSF accepts that award recommendation and says, yes, I agree, I concur that it should be funded. And then it's still not even an award at that point because it still has to go through another business review. So on step 8, that's where it goes to the Division of Grants and Agreements, and they review things to say, can we give the funding to this organization? Have they met our policies? Have they met our financial requirements? And only at that stage after business review is it actually an award. So the declines are earlier in the process. A program officer could recommend a decline, for example. The division director could concur with that decline and it would be declined. But in the case of award, you need it to go through all of those steps: program officer recommendation, division director review, and business review before it's an award. If we go to the next slide. So let's take everything that we've talked about today and kind of work through a real world example. Let's say that you're an applicant, a PI who works at a university who's really interested in human cells. So you see the National Science Foundation has something called Investigator-Initiated Research Projects, NSF 21509, as a funding opportunity. And that's offered through the Molecular and Cellular Biosciences, or MCB division, shown in green. So you apply for that funding opportunity, you write your proposal, you submit it, NSF receives it, NSF assigns it to the program officer that it most likely aligns with in the Division of Molecular and Cellular Biosciences, which is cellular dynamics and function, because it has to do with human cells. Cellular dynamics and function is kind of where it would fit scientifically. And that's in a program which is sometimes called a cluster at that stage. So CDF, or Cellular Dynamics and Function, has a program officer who's assigned to your proposal. They read it, they find the right reviewers for it, they decide, plan how they're going to do the review and start the peer review process. They go through the peer review process and they make a recommendation for award, let's say in this case. So that recommendation goes to the division director, the director of the MCB division, or Molecular Cellular Biosciences division. That division director says, hey, I completely agree, it's great work, let's go ahead and fund it. That recommendation and that concurrence goes to the Division of Grants and Agreements, which is a non-research area of NSF. That's where they do the business check, they check on policy, they check on finances. And if they say everything looks great, let's go ahead and fund it, then it becomes an award. In the case of a decline, you can actually go through Chapter 4D of the PAPBG that talks about reconsideration of declines. And that's where you would get the directorate involved, which is the Directorate of Biological Sciences in this case. So there is another step that we're not going to talk about, but you can always look back at that chapter for more information. So that is how an award is created through NSF. Let's talk about the next slide. How long does it take to process a proposal through to award at NSF? What are your thoughts? For some people, it's way short, and others probably not short enough.
2 months, 3 to 5 months, 6 to 9 months, 6 months, 6 months, another 6 months. We have 6 to 9 months.
Sounds like everyone's pretty much there if we advance the slide. So we can see that first phase that we talked about, which is proposal preparation, and then the submission is about 90 days from the time that they offer the opportunity to when they expect to be receiving your proposals. Sometimes that stage is a little bit longer if they know further in advance that they can offer the funding opportunity, but 90 days is what they have set aside for that phase. Phase 2 is where the 6 months comes from. For the proposal review and processing, it takes around 6 months or sometimes longer than 6 months to get all the way from reviewers being selected to review that proposal through that division director concurrence of the award or decline. And then phase 3, that award processing with the division of grants and agreements and the finalization of the award where you're notified and that goes through being accepted, it takes an additional 30 days. There's internal standards that are set at the NSF based on the Government Performance and Results Act of 1993 that sets that 6-month time frame.
We have a question.
Sure.
Is the PI notified after stage 7 or stage 8?
So it's usually after stage 7. It can be stage 8, though, in the case of an award, you might not be notified until that award business review is conducted.
At what stage does NSF ask for just-in-time information?
That's a good question. So that depends because the just-in-time could be for the program officer to make their recommendation. So it might be closer to stage 6. It could be for the division director to make their concurrence. So it could be after step 6, closer to step 7.
Okay.
And I think that's what we have as far as the presentation today. But if we advance to the next slide, we'd love to take any additional questions or insights that you might have, maybe having gone through this process before at NSF. So anyone have any questions?
You can raise your hand, write it in the chat, or even feel free to unmute yourself at this point. This session should be, yes, it is being recorded.
Well, I have a few questions maybe for the audience, if you'd like to chime in. Has anyone experienced any difficulties with any steps of this process along the way? And if you did experience a difficulty, who did you reach out to for help?
We have a response from Rebecca. Usually I contact the program officer for issues and questions.
Exactly. Program officers are a great resource. They are a wealth of information. They know their portfolio so well, and they're the people that you definitely can feel free to contact. Some people are afraid to call or email, but I would definitely suggest calling or emailing and making sure that, you know, as a taxpayer, they work for you. So feel free to get your voice heard. They're the person that can definitely help navigate the system that is NSF. Sometimes it's a big black hole as an agency. So feel free to reach out to your program officer.
Okay, Erica adds proposal updates. I suppose this is a challenge. Proposal updates after submissions was difficult in the past. And it looks like she reached out to the help desk and program officers helped her.
Exactly. The help desk is also a great resource.
Melissa adds, because we don't submit a lot of NSF, so I often reach out to my colleagues in the other units at UCF who submit lots of NSF as a first contact.
Great suggestion too. I think Lorelei has her hand up.
Oh,
Yep. Hi, this is Lorelei. It was a lot to put in the chat, so I thought I'd just come over voice. Can you talk about, I know it'll be different for every individual reviewer, but how much do the reviewers take into consideration the other elements of the proposal besides the project description, I mean, the project summary and project description? For instance, are they really scrutinizing the bio sketches for a track record of publications? How are they using the current and pending support documents, if at all? I know the data management plan is important, but some of those other items, you know, how are they used by the reviewers, or is it more of a program officer tool? Just speak more broadly about those items.
Sure, absolutely. So things are reviewed across the board. So it's not just only your description or your summary. And the reviewers are really taking an in-depth look at the entire proposal. So these solicitation will say what they're using for review. So it might be in addition to intellectual merit or broader impacts, there's other review criteria. It could say you have to have a data management plan, you have to have a postdoc mentoring plan, and those are actually taken into account in the review process. So it really is important to have a complete proposal according to the PAPPG, not just only focused on only broader impacts or intellectual merit.
Okay, we have a question. Patricia asks, how can researchers get involved in merit review process? I know NSF invites awardees to serve, but can faculty volunteer?
Absolutely. Solicitations will say whether or not they're looking for reviewers. And even if you're not sure, the best way to do it is to go on nsf.gov, the website, find the area of science that's most applicable to what your expertise is in, and reach out to the program officers that are inside of that area of science and say, I'd love to be a reviewer. Here's my CV. Here's a resume. Here's a little bit about what I've done, a paragraph or two, and send that off as an email. Say that you're very interested in reviewing. And usually they take a look at those and use that when they're selecting reviewers. So it's always good to volunteer. I think I saw an earlier question in the chat from Rebecca asking, are there any recommendations for those PIs that are applying for the first time to NSF? And I would say just make sure that you're reaching out to, again, people at your university that have maybe done it before, and also the program officer that's in charge of the program. And you can find that on nsf.gov by looking up that solicitation. They'll have points of contact in the very top of the solicitation of who is the program officer for that area. Reach out to them, express your interest in applying for a funding opportunity, and then they can help guide you in those first steps as a first-time applicant as well.
All right, Stacy, we do have one more question. If a panel doesn't recommend a proposal for funding, is that it, or does the program officer still consider the impact?
So it's not it. Again, remember, it's just expertise that the panel is providing to the program officer. So it really is up to the program officer to make a recommendation for funding or award or decline. The panel does play a major role in that recommendation, but again, the program officer has a lot to think about when they're coming up with whether or not they're going to award or decline. So it doesn't end at the stage of panel, just as it doesn't end at the stage of program officer. It really does move through the process.
Melissa adds that UCF's Research Development Office also holds trainings for newer PIs for career and other solicitations.
Oh, great suggestion.
Any other questions or things anyone would like to share? Challenges that you have, things that you'd like to kind of throw out there for discussion? And if I missed your question in the chat, please go ahead and just copy it back in and we'll get to it.
I just have a question.
Priscilla, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I've had, I've worked with research scientists, and a lot of the comments that I've heard from them when they receive decline proposals is that the reviewers did not understand their science. So I had posed a question before, and my question was, how can we find out the expertise of whoever's reviewing? And the reason was, do we need to add keywords into the proposals that may help the program manager find the right reviewer?
If the solicitation requests keywords, sometimes they say that after the overview section, add 5 or 6 or 7 keywords. Feel free to provide those keywords. You can also make recommendations when you submit as to who to review or who not to review your proposal. You can always make that recommendation to the program officer. So feel free to use that avenue as well. But it really is up to the program officer to make sure that the science is represented in the review scheme. So it's up to them to be able to understand your proposal and find the right reviewers for it. It's part of the review process. Through resubmission as well, you always have the chance of getting additional reviewers or additional eyes on it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never have reviewers that are aligned with the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question. Lorelei is asking, how many resubmissions is too many?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a hard, fast answer for that one, unfortunately. And I would say with the funding climate being so competitive, sometimes you will be resubmitting the same proposal, with revisions, with things to make it a lot better on the second time or third time. So I would say on the opposite of that, don't get discouraged by hearing a decline. It's really one step in that process to get you to the award stage. So feel free to resubmit, reach out to the program officer, fully understand the comments that you get back from the decline and the program summary, the panel summary, to understand what the review process was like and why you're getting the comments that you're getting, and then make those changes, get a second set of eyes on it before you submit, and make sure that it's that further improved before you go ahead and resubmit. But I would say don't get discouraged by it. Just keep trying to hit that next bar, because it might be a portfolio thing on their side where you're cutting it really close, but you're just not over the edge yet. So don't get too discouraged.
Okay, we have another question. Antique was asking, can you explain a situation to where a PI has been authorized for rolling submissions?
I'm not sure what that authorization would be. So I don't have a good explanation for this one. I don't know if Stephanie, if you understand that question.
We know we have rolling submission deadlines where we can just continue to submit at any time. I'm not sure also exactly what you mean by that. Antique, do you want to unmute yourself and help us understand?
Hi, yes. I had a PI that it was just a different situation for me because I had never dealt with a PI that was, I believe they're authorized in some way to submit like to an R01 and be on like a rolling type of submission. And it is a certain deadline that they can submit to. So I just wanted a little bit more, I guess, insight into that because, like I said, it was new to me. I took on a new, took a position in a new department. And so that was new to me. So I just wanted to get a little bit more insight. And they call them rolling submissions. So just a little bit more insight as to, you know, how they become authorized. Is this something that, you know, that, you know, they, any PI, you know, is authorized to do. So I just wanted a little more insight because it was so new to me. I had never dealt with that before, so.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have not dealt with that myself either.
Okay.
No, I know that they have rolling deadlines that are much more prevalent now than when I worked at National Science Foundation. Those deadlines, they were talking about different ways of doing the review, but it's the same process. It's just going to be maybe different ways to accommodate that deadline being that extended. But I don't have a clear understanding of how they're handling the rolling deadline work at this time, because that was kind of after I was there.
Okay, that's no problem.
We have another question, Stacy, about rolling deadlines, and you may have already answered it, but do you know if the review panels meet, for example, on a certain basis, let's say quarterly, for these rolling deadlines? Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of that. Unfortunately, I don't know. So I think it's also not laid out in the PAPPG, so that might not be something necessarily that we need to know as applicants. It'll just be part of the internal process of NSF, but the same thing will be happening where your proposal will be getting reviewed either independently or in that panel formation.
Okay. We'll give a couple more minutes if there's any more questions before we close up. You have some thank yous coming in.
Oh, thank you.
Very informative presentation. Very enlightening. All right. Wonderful. Well, that concludes our discussion session today. Thank you so much to everyone who attended and also who participated. We had a wonderful time spending the last hour with you all. We hope you enjoy the rest of FRAC. Bye now.